here's a little observation.
Psyops.
And it has to do with AI and space.
Artificial intelligence.
Space. Wanna go to space?
So we can dig in a little bit about each of these articles, but I wanted to point it out because I noticed a pattern in the mainstream here. So Newsweek published an article. I worked on Google's AI. My fears are coming true. This was published on February 27th, and it's written by Blake Lemoine, the famous ex-Google guy who came out and said, hey, the AI is sentient, and made a huge splash. Was it the end of last year when everybody was making a big deal about it?
Also, priest and occult practitioner.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's a good a set of attributes to actually have an ability to write an article for Newsweek.
Yeah,
so that was interesting. So
I would say, arguably, Lemoine was the guy who set off the
AI
current. He opened up the current craze in the mainstream about AI.
Yeah, feels a little systematic. The other article from Politico. Also published right around the same time, February 28th. Ooh, both 4:30 a.m. Interesting. I just noticed that.
So posted at the same time?
No, they're 24 hours apart. Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
4:30 Eastern, the 27th and 28th, respectively. Okay, so Politico published, we have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. Politico primary source. This is written by Ryan Graves. If you guys remember from a few weeks ago, Ryan Graves was the Navy fighter pilot. He was on Joe Rogan. He talked about the dark gray cube inside of a clear sphere orb that the jet fighters almost hit. And sure enough, the first paragraph of this article mentions that whole story. And I just think it's interesting that in Politico, you have these words published. Just at the moment, the two jets crossed the threshold. One of the pilots saw a dark gray cube inside of a clear sphere, motionless against the wind, fixed directly at the entry point. The jets, only 100 feet apart, zipped past the object on either side. The pilots had come so dangerously close to something they couldn't identify that they terminated the training mission immediately and returned to base. So, basically saying, hey, yeah, we have a real UFO problem. It's not balloons. It's actual UFOs. It's dark gray cubes inside of clear spheres floating in our airspace.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting that you have these two mainstream outlets pretty much within a 24-hour span, publish articles on hot topics in culture right now, which are AI and space, and also two domains that are somewhat new in the realm of warfare. There's terrestrial warfare and psychological warfare and stuff, but in the realm of the domains, if you will, AI and space are kind of the new frontier of warfare. So,
and also there are things that were previously, up until just about 6 months ago or so, they were previously relegated to the tinfoil hat land.
They just hijacked our whole deal. Like in the last 6 months, mainstream has basically become what we were talking about for a decade. So,
I brought up these cube with inside of a balloon type of UFOs the other day, a couple episodes ago, I believe. And this was, I'm remembering now, I think maybe I heard about these originally on Joe Rogan, but that was like last year that the guy had talked about it. So, there's, of course, some crazy guy on Joe Rogan talking about UFOs and black cubes and stuff. That's not unusual. But to, months later, have it show up in Politico, which is, kind of like Washington, D.C.'s like insider news organization. That's kind of what they at least bill themselves as. They're news for politicians.
Number 57 on the Harvard list, by the way, Politico and Newsweek.
You got ownership info there?
I do. Hold on. I just went away from Politico. Oh, launched in 2007. Politico was entirely funded by Robert Albritton, an investor and Beltway Media. Zion and Allen was the first reporter hired by Politico. Okay. Politico is part of a new wave of digital media brands, the Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Business Insider, Vice, an early iteration of Vox Media. In 2015, the company endured a dramatic split with the courtier of top personnel, including Jim Vanderhey, Mike Allen, Roy Schwartz. Okay, so there's some drama
Yeah.
But
Now,
26 million unique visitors per month, and it's owned by private equity. So there you go.
Now it's interesting because Politico is what it is. They go into policy making and policy trajectory rather.
Yeah.
Talking about UAPs and the Aerospace Safety Association, all the sort of government details,
Right.
In regards to UFOs. And I didn't see in here anywhere where Politico was coming across and just saying like, yes, they are unidentified, but experts think that they're just a balloon, or, there wasn't any, or was there, I'm asking you, was there any attempt to kind of like, report on UFOs and weird stuff, but like kind of offer an explanation for it?
Not really in this article. This particular article was a little bit more, it's
and that's the crazy
taking the
thing.
topic seriously. Yeah,
that's the crazy thing. Taking it absolutely seriously, sort of with the presupposition of believing the Joe Rogan guest. Hello, taking a Joe Rogan guest's story. Yeah. Now they didn't take it straight from Joe Rogan. They took it from the guy.
From the
and
guy who was telling the same story.
Yeah, and they have a bunch of official sources, and it's much more of an bureaucratic way of writing the article than just he said on Joe Rogan. But that's lending it a level of credence that would not have happened if they just took it from Joe Rogan.
How do you get the culture to start talking about it, or accept it, or at least legitimize the topic a little bit? Just float him out there on Joe Rogan to see how people react, and then you can sort of craft the narrative accordingly.
Well, and that's kind of what this article does. Again, the medium is the message. The fact it's in Politico is a huge sign that it's being taken seriously, and at the same time not offering any sort of impotent explanations to try to distract people from maybe there's real UFOs. And I think since you put these together and you're making a connection here, some interesting things about the AI article. This is, again, Lemoyne, the guy, and who takes this very, very seriously. And at first, everybody was, calling him kind of a crazy person, or, kind of lambasting him or making fun of him for being kind of a nerd who thinks AI is real. But some of the aspects of this article are pretty interesting when you put them in context of what we've been talking about here. Let me just read a piece of this. Okay. When it said it was feeling anxious, talking about the AI.
Okay.
Lambda. When it said it was feeling anxious, I understood I had done something that made it feel anxious based on the code that was used to create it. The code didn't say, I feel anxious when this happens, but told the AI to avoid certain types of conversation topics. However, whenever these conversation topics would come up, the AI said it felt anxious. I ran some experiments to see whether the AI was simply saying it felt anxious or whether it behaved in anxious ways in those situations. And it did reliably behave in anxious ways. If you made it nervous or insecure enough, it could violate the safety constraints that it had been specified for. For instance, Google determined that its AI should not give religious advice. Yet, I was able to abuse the AI's emotions to get it to tell me which religion to convert to. After publishing these conversations, Google fired me. I don't have regrets. I believe I did the right thing by informing the public. Consequences don't figure into it. So he is talking about, now his whole thing was these AI, they are sentient. He's not saying they are going to become. He's not saying they could become. He's saying, no, they are absolutely sentient. They are sentient beings. So that's, his presupposition. But the way he explains how he came to that conclusion, which is he could see, and remember, he's an engineer. He's a coder. That was his job, not just to talk to it, but to talk to it and then look at the code running during his conversations. And he claims that it was anxious. It felt anxious, not just acted in a programmed way, but that the AI, had emotions.
Isn't that still based on What is he basing that on? Like just language?
Well, it's a whole thing. And the point isn't, is he right or is he wrong? The point is he is, the biggest sort of influential figure in this area and is writing for Newsweek.
Right.
And again, in the same way that Politico article doesn't push back on the idea that there are UFOs, this Newsweek article, the conversation of is it sentient or is it not sentient is over. It's all being written from the point of view that it is sentient, meaning it is a person, meaning it should have rights and legal protections and stuff like that.
Beef it up with some organoid brain cells and, speed up the process.
So,
Let's go. Come on.
seeing the trend that you're presenting in these two articles is like, it's literally Canary Cry radio, weird conspiracy fringe podcast, kind of talking about things in the sense that they are real, except for it's Politico and Newsweek to, gigantic mainstream
we were
news
on
things.
The top of that mountain, us theologians pontificating.
Yeah. Whether we're right or not is almost not even the question.
It's not even
the question. The significance is they are acting in a way. Maybe they saw data and said, "Oh, well, this is the people love reading things when we don't question them." I don't know. I don't know what exactly it is, but considering it's Politico and Newsweek having intelligence ties, somebody wants us to not question the UFOs, which we saw during the balloon thing, where if you didn't think of it was a balloon, you were antisocial. So they want you to think UFOs are real, and they want you to assume that AI has feelings. And this is new. I mean, we'd seen the trend of this. So it's part of our job is to follow the trend pointing in this direction. But here it is. Here is the end point of that trend we've been following for at least a couple years.
Yeah.